So when Amazon announced one of its biggest layoffs ever, you probably saw the headlines, and they all told a pretty simple story. AI is coming for our jobs. But what if I told you that's not the whole story? That behind that simple narrative, there's a much deeper and way more expensive race for the future of tech.
Just let this number sink in for a second. 30,000. That's how many corporate jobs Amazon is slashing. This isn't just, trimming the fat or a minor tweak. This is a massive, massive event.
And to put that in perspective for you, we're talking about nearly 1 out of every 10 people in their corporate offices. Think about that. These are the folks who built and run the Amazon machine we all use every day.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll talk about the initial shockwave. Then we'll look at Amazon's official story versus, what might be the deeper truth. After that, we'll zoom out to see the bigger picture, touch on the very real human cost, and finally, figure out what this tells us about a whole new corporate playbook.
This isn't just another round of layoffs. This is one of the biggest cuts in the company's entire 30-plus year history. It's even bigger than the cuts they made after that post-pandemic hiring boom. Something fundamental is definitely changing inside one of the most powerful companies on the planet.
So what's the official line from Amazon? Well, it's a pretty clean, simple, and honestly, a very slick story. It's all about AI making the company smarter, faster, and more efficient.
And you don't have to take my word for it. Here's a quote from Beth Galetti, a senior VP there. She's basically framing this whole thing as a necessary move to keep up with AI. The message they're sending is pretty clear. To innovate, we got to get lean. And it all comes down to this one buzz phrase you're probably hearing everywhere: AI efficiency. It's this promise, right, that super smart algorithms can now handle all the grunt work, freeing up a company to do way more with way fewer people.
But here's where it gets really interesting. That story sounds great, right? Almost too great. Some analysts are actually calling it a lazy narrative. They're arguing that this isn't really about AI doing the work for people. It's about something much more basic: the insane cost of AI itself.
So you really have to ask yourself, is this whole thing about getting more productive? Or is there a big financial crunch hiding behind all the AI buzzwords?
Yeah, one AI analyst, Nate B. Jones, put it pretty bluntly. He said it's not because the robots are doing the jobs now. Nope. He says it's about the cost of chips. We're talking about those incredibly expensive, incredibly powerful GPUs, the computer chips you need to run all this advanced AI.
So this lays it out perfectly. You have two totally different stories. The official one is about productivity. But the other one, the financial story, is that Amazon needs to free up billions of dollars in salaries just so it can afford to buy the mountain of computer chips it needs to compete in the AI arms race. They are literally trading people for hardware.
And if you want to know why they're so desperate for that cash, just look at the cloud computing race. AWS, Amazon's big moneymaker, used to be the undisputed king. But now, its growth is way, way behind competitors like Microsoft and Google. Wall Street is watching, and Amazon knows it needs a massive investment to close that gap.
But let's zoom out for a minute, because this is so much bigger than just Amazon. What's happening there is actually part of a much larger trend across the entire tech industry, and honestly, it's a bit worrying.
So far this year, more than 120,000 tech employees around the world have been laid off. That's not a blip, it's a huge sector-wide correction. A lot of the companies that hired like crazy during the pandemic are now cutting back just as aggressively. And to give you some historical context, these Amazon cuts are right up there with some of the biggest corporate layoffs we've ever seen. We're talking IBM in the 90s, Citigroup during the 2008 financial crisis. This is a big, big deal. And look, this isn't just a feeling people have. The actual government data confirms it. The market for tech and management jobs is shrinking at a rate we haven't seen in 10 years. It really does feel like the boom times for white-collar work might be cooling off.
But behind all the charts, all the corporate strategy, there are people. 30,000 of them. And it's so important that we don't forget what this actually means for them.
I mean, just listen to this quote from a senior software engineer who was let go. It just captures that sense of shock and betrayal. So many of these people had fantastic performance reviews. They were getting promoted, and then overnight, none of that mattered. It's just a brutal lesson that your individual performance won't always save you. And the way it all went down has been described as just cold and impersonal. People finding out because their laptop access was suddenly cut off or through an automated email. No chance to even say goodbye to their teams.
It really shows this growing disconnect between these huge corporations and the actual human beings who work there.
So, what's the big lesson here? What do we take away from all this? Well, it looks like we're seeing a brand new corporate playbook emerge, one that's really changing the game for all of us.
It seems to be this three-step process. First, you grow. Hire like crazy during the good times to get bigger. Second, you invest. Pour all that money into AI and automation. And third, you optimize. You cut the very human jobs you just created to pay for the AI, all while telling Wall Street it's for efficiency. It's a cycle that treats people like a temporary resource.
And that really leaves us with this final, critical question. It's the central conflict of our time. As AI gets more powerful, will companies see their people as assets to be invested in, retrained, and developed? Or will they just see them as an expense on a spreadsheet, something to be optimized and ultimately eliminated? Amazon's latest move seems to suggest an answer, and it's one we're all going to be dealing with for a long, long time.